Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Risk and Roll podcast. We are going to dive into some, thoughtful topics, some things that you might consider truth when in reality they are nothing more than just a well-rehearsed myth. I've got a good one only because, Ray, I'm sitting here in Tennessee filming the continuing education that's going to be for people's licenses if they want to stay in the industry in 27, and we're 3/4 of the way through the 2-hour Oregon course, and there's one we just dealt with that we put on film I'll talk about in my turn. But I want you to start this off. You're the key component to this whole topic. What do you got?
Okay. Well, thank you, Nathan, and again, glad to be with this crowd. So something I was thinking about and often have to deal with, and I expect a lot of us in risk management and management to deal with, is the misunderstandings of the disciplines that we work with, particularly at the leadership level. So sometimes we just have to actually baseline people as to what the facts are, how things work, and then we can apply our discipline. So, and I found that, with multiple clients, literally all over the place. Let me kick it off, and I'll give you a key one, and it's actually one of my, I don't know if it's a pet peeve or one of my favorite ones, how you look at it. But the myth is, like with state examinations, right? There's this expectation that the states who are doing the examinations actually know their law better than anybody. And when they issue a finding, they say, here's the finding, here's the issue, this is what we expect you to do. And then there's this idea that, well, they said it, therefore it must be true. They know the law, so we're just going to do what they say. And in fact, that's often not the case. I found state examinations, as I think I may have mentioned before, is one of my favorite things to do. And I love the state examiners. I'm not suggesting that we go out with pitchforks and torches and take them out. It's not what I'm suggesting. But they have certain expectations of how their law should apply. And when you get an examination, you get a finding, you should probably look at the finding, look at the law they're citing, and see if it tracks the way with you understand it or what it actually says. So I have a few. I know. One time dealing with the client, I won't say what state it was, but there was an expectation that any lender would have to pull a background report, background check, and have that before you would offer the job to someone to hire them. And they've actually issued multiple public consent orders at this point. This is many years ago. Public consent orders on this. And I looked at this and looked at the regulation, and I was going back and forth. And then I turned the page, and it also says, by the way, if not so many words, if you hire them and don't have the background check back, but you do discover at that point when you do get the background check after you've hired them that it's not appropriate, then you will have to fire them. You have to let them go. Well, that's kind of contrary to what the examiners were saying in writing the consent order, because they said, no, 100% you must always do this. When I presented that to the examiner and to the lawyers there, it was an interesting phone call. They cut the phone call off really quick. They came back and said, okay, this is how we think it means. So we're not going to cite you or do consent orders. Like, of course not, because it's not what the law says. The law doesn't say that I have to do a background check, have the results before I can even offer them the position to it doesn't say that. It says the opposite if you turn the page. And they never really looked at it that way. So it just gives you an example of states, and I love them dearly. They work hard. They mean well. This is not malintented. They're not out to get us. But they don't always understand the law itself. And the reason why that's important for us is, look, a lot of times it's easy, just do what they asked. But, and all of us, and particularly Dana in operations, you understand this probably really well, is if they're asking you to get a disclosure, for example, in the middle of a process where you have no other disclosure vehicle like redisclosure or anything, that's going to slow down your process. That is a huge operational impact that they're asking for. They didn't even know it. So this is why the point is, the myth is, do they know what they're talking about on their own law? I will tell you, probably in examinations, 40% of the time, I will find something that is not right on point on the law the way they expect you to understand it. So it's worthy to read it, look at it, push back, and say, it's a myth that you know what you're doing. We have to, as we always say, trust but verify. That's right.
Verify.
Trust but verify.
Always.
Right.
This topic, Ray, because, regulators to me are kind of like parenting, right? You've got all the authority, but not necessarily, and you expect obedience, right? So all of the authority expect obedience, but sometimes the information that is being put out there is cloudy, right? And maybe the way that one kid interprets it versus the other kid interprets it. Oh. So it's a perfect example of really bringing it back to real life. Just because something has full authority or perceived full authority doesn't mean that we shouldn't be pushing back and asking questions, right? We expect our kids to do that. That's how they learn. That's how they grow. That's how this industry, I think, continues to learn and grow, is as lenders, we should challenge the regulatory bodies, not in an adverse way where we're always, coming at them, but in a collaborative way of like, listen, we're all in this to make loans, right? We want to make good loans to good borrowers. And so how do we collectively do that together?
Well, so
In that
Dana,
same
what you're saying,
misconception,
go,
sorry,
Dana.
Ray, go ahead.
I was going to say, Danny, you bring up a good point like parenting. And you all know, we're all parents here, you wait till they're 18 and you say, you know what, we were just winging it. And I just wish regulators sometimes would say, you know what, we were just winging it.
Totally.
And I will tell you that they're really responsible. But Dana, that's actually a good point. It's they're doing their best and they understand it. But sometimes, even though the book's in front of them, how they interpret the playbook is a little bit different.
Nathan, I'm going to kick it over to Greg only because what I realize is I think that we could go down the regulator avenue here, but Greg's going to bring in, and I want him to add another flavor to this discussion because his data and analytics and what they work with on a regular basis, I think is going to add some good color here. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Let's talk about HMDA data. And my first myth today is that HMDA is only for fair lending and compliance. So when you hear HMDA, you might think about the burden on you to report it. You might think about exams, consent orders, fair lending checklists. But HMDA is a whole lot more because it's not just your data that goes up, but once the government receives all of that data, it publishes the entire data set for about 5,000 lenders each year. And that is an extremely rich treasure trove for market sizing, for competitive intelligence, for pricing and cost structure insights, for many, many use cases. So let me just lay that out there and invite the rest of you to kind of weigh in on that. Do you think that's actually a myth? Is that a pretty good one that I threw out there?
Yeah,
I think it's a myth at all. I think that the consideration is fair lending is what the CFPB would always go after people for. They would cite, source, and look for HMDA data. The examiners would look at their data and say, here's how you're impacting your community. Future or past experiences is a good telltale to future expectations, right? So historical data actually does help us look to a future expectation of performance in certain areas or opportunity outside of the whole regulatory gotcha moments. So I think that's a really good myth and a really good call to action, especially when people should call out and reach out to you, Greg, at Polygon and say, hey, help us understand what our future looks like in this zone based on the performance of our competitors in the marketplace,
right.
Not even dealing with the
it's a remarkable
fair lending
data
issues.
As you all keep hearing me say, for that very reason, it's multiple use cases all at once. And in fact, you really shouldn't separate your fair lending from your competitive intel and your strategic planning, go-to-market planning, because they're really one and the same. How do I do a good job at lending, doing right by the company and by the people I'm serving all at the same time? It's the same data set.
I love that you raised this one up, Greg, because obviously it's very relevant in the traditional market, right? But one of the things that I work with a lot is private lenders. And I'll have a private lender tell me all the time, oh, I don't have to HMDA report. I'm like, listen, you might not be bound because of the commercial regulations over your paper that you don't have to, fair lending, there's no CD disclosures, all of those things. But HMDA isn't just about those things. You hit the nail perfectly, right? This is market intel data. And so having conversations with private lenders, oftentimes they're super surprised, one, that it's not a nice to have. This is a must do requirement. You have very little things as a private lender that you must do. This is one of them. So I love that you raised this one up as a myth. This is a great one.
And Greg, I agree that we haven't pushed that HMDA data is for compliance reasons. And I will tell you, Greg, I mean, it's people like you that have enlightened us to what else you can do. And I think the HMDA data itself is a springboard to go on to other data. And this is what I've seen you guys do. The other data that is not just, you can see, your competitors are more successful in a certain market than you are or whatever it is, which it does show just straight on HMDA. But you combine it with NMLS data and other data that you can actually learn things about your own company that you don't even know, but the data is out there. So I've seen you guys do that. I think we should embrace it as not a compliance issue, but it's just good. We all have to commit to the data. Now let's use it to our advantage. And I think that's something we haven't done as much in this industry and we probably should do it much
Absolutely.
more than we have.
We see HMDA as that anchor, sort of the story about the primary market that connects with other primary market data sets, but it also starts to tell the story of the secondary market with purchase loans that are also in HMDA and with who purchased the originations that are in HMDA. So we got that sort of on-ramp to the next stage, and we blend that with the secondary market data and then inventory data, census data about who you're selling to. It all fits together as you kind of keep connecting all those data sets.
That is really good. Data analytics when it comes to future forecasting, and what I heard here too, I'm just going to echo, is that, look, when your marketing department starts looking at data sets and your fulfillment department starts looking at what kind of loan products we're going to start working and making sure we issue, you should also work with the compliance department. How's it impacting the areas with which we work? And are there opportunities to grow in those areas based on the data? Dana, let's kick it over to you. You are in private lending more often than not, but like you said, there's HMDA issues there. What's one of the myths that you like to or have to often overcome? Specifically.
I mean, let's just keep on the roll partly, with the HMDA, right? Because you just said it beautifully, Nathan, right? This gives you an opportunity to potentially expand, your lending products and programs, once you kind of know where your market sits. And so how about DPA, right? Down payment assistance program. Like that one, for whatever reason, makes lenders tremble because they just see that, the borrowers ultimately don't have any skin in the game, right? All of the funds are coming from, their loan or a down payment assistance. So a lot of lenders really shy away from, that type of product from a perceived risk perspective. But I would venture a myth guess with Greg's data that that's actually not the case, right? These loans are very high performing and you're serving a borrower set that many lenders have not gone into that. And you could have a market expansion off of something, for example, like DPA. There's a lot of myths in just, lending, right? And we're talking about borrowers all the way, through lenders. Some of my favorite myths, just from the consumer side is, if I don't have a 20% down payment, if I don't have a FICO score in the 700, like these are things that just don't come into play anymore. The program width that is available out there from consumers, right? From everyone who, writes down every dollar on their tax returns and shows a loss, right? There's bank statement loans. There's every program that you could come up with. I could perceive that there is a borrower that you could, match it to. So, listen, lender shops have to make a determination about where they want, their program risk to be. I think that lenders have been a little slow in adopting some of these other types of programs that really could open up the box for not only revenue, which is certainly important in our market, right? But being able to say yes to more consumers and giving them an opportunity to be homeowners, or what I focus on a lot is investors and creating a legacy wealth for their families, right? Or creating more inventory for the traditional side of the business, right? All of those things gone hand in hand, but they've been traditionally kind of separated.
That's a really good one, especially when you come to opening up markets in what may be considered more risky categories, right? Specifically looking back in 15 years now from the meltdown and everything else that we had going on, people could be like, oh gosh, man, that was super risky that we did that. Well, there's a place and an appetite for a lot of things. And even in those said things, most of the states are like, yeah, as long as you can prove they had the ability to repay, they're not even putting a credit score on it or an income source. They're just saying, could you prove they had the ability to repay when you authorize the loan segment? And then if you offer them a NEGAM, if you will, or some sort of bank statement loan, if called on due, they would actually be able to perform on the loan in full. Yeah, okay, you have the records, you have the retention, you're good to go. You didn't do anything necessarily abusive in that situation. But it's a good tie over to Bob with Daylight AML BSA, who's all about hiding the money, or at least finding how people hide the money. What do you got for us, Bob?
Well, I touch this compliance world by trying to be an asset to those of you inside of lenders who are responsible for compliance. And my world is Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering. Everybody's first reaction is, we don't have any of that. It doesn't apply to me. The myth I would dispel is just that. Starting in April of 2012, the Bank Secrecy Act rules all got applied to mortgage lenders, non-bank lenders, mortgage brokers. And I've spoken to so many brokers, especially small shops, who go, I don't do anything. That's just not on my radar to comply with that at all. And that certainly is one approach to risk management. You can say, now I'll handle the fine when it comes up.
That's the roll the dice in our risk and roll right there.
Whatever.
That's right.
That's right.
I have so many problems before I get down to complying with BSA. And my advice to those people is, look, I ran my own mortgage shop for 7 or 8 years. Name yourself officially the BSA officer. You, the broker of record, you're it. Then go download some generic P&Ps and put them in the file. I mean, make an attempt to show that you're trying to get educated and comply with this stuff. Real estate and mortgages is the #1 way around the world to launder money. And yet in the United States, it's like the last topic that ever comes up. If you're in London, it's the first topic that comes up. If you're buying a mansion in Belgravia, there's no such thing as buying property in England anonymously anymore. It used to be a big problem. It's not anymore. They really cracked down. Oddly, Ireland is like king of the hill when you talk about strict anti-money laundering. Anyway.
Those are my people. We're going to be strict about stuff.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
They draw their lines, don't they?
Anytime you can discuss compliance over a Guinness is a fine.
That's right.
That's a good day right there.
It's a good day.
So it does apply, and I'd be interested in people's comments. You know, there's been a lot of buzz about the credit bureaus, and I'd be interested in everybody's comments on, do we go with one bureau? Do we go with 3? Let me just set up this little topic by saying this. I don't ever remember agreeing to give all my private information to anybody. I don't remember agreeing. Then we're so proud of being capitalists in this country. How come we don't have a winner? We have 3 bureaus. Why isn't one better than the others and the others go out of business? Why are we coddling these 3? And the final observation I have about it, when you talk about a myth, I'm not the customer of a credit report. It's the lenders. Let them pay for it. I didn't ask for 3 of you to evaluate my credit. I'm not the one ordering it. I am not the customer. The banks are the customers. Why don't we have one credit bureau that is better than the others and proves that by, Greg, default rates, loan performance, things that can be tied to, look, Experian, better than the others, more predictive. I'm troubled by this presumption that we got to have 3 of them, and really the misrepresentation that I'm their customer. I'm not their customer.
Yeah.
You know
what I think? For me, it's the... Go ahead, Ray.
Sorry. What I think is maybe we should let Greg and his group have the consumer information, because he'll be that one that's got it all nailed down kind of data point, if you ask me. So I vote for Greg to be able to give it all to Greg,
wow.
and then
I vote for
Polygon
Greg too.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Polygon could be the king of the hill with not only good credit information, but we could predict everything, including, you know, what kind of color car they're going to buy, whatever it is. I mean, the data is out there, and he does it better than anybody else. That's what I think.
We're not going to take it because we don't do PII deliberately. We don't think you need to do effective market intelligence. Don't need to put the clause, well, that's a very subjective statement, but I'll finish it. You don't need to put your clause into the consumer in order to do a good job. But I will point out, since you're calling out the different segments and the different ways that we can look at what performs better than what, VantageScore data just came online in the agency data that we publish in our MBS Pivot product every month. So we'll be able to see FICO versus VantageScore performance over time going forward as that data accumulates. And HMDA all along has had the credit scoring technology or package that was used to underwrite that loan. So we can always see what that breakdown is in the primary market as well.
Yeah, they should just bucketize that. We should be able to analyze that data to some degree instead of hiding it.
Yeah,
yes.
There we have to estimate it in HMDA. Secondary market, then we have the score and the technology. So we can see it both ways and see it over time.
So, Bob, to your point, you know, capital markets and the myth and structure. So let me hit on 2 of those points, right? So small shops, it's all about red flags. I'm with you 100%. Cash out analysis, cash purchasing a big piece of property and then coming out and doing cash out refi 6 months later, that's got bank secrecy all written all over it. That's money laundering 101, right? You take illicit gains, put it into a proper asset, and then pull it out. Like, you've just laundered your money. And the fact that mortgage companies are not watching that carefully and doing a little bit more due diligence because they're like, they had the ability to repay. You're like, oh my gosh, you're looking at the wrong market point.
I don't
That's a risky
disagree with you,
endeavor.
Nathan, with the one exception that, over on the asset-based lending side, that's a standard practice, right? We have entities or sponsors that are taking their, cash as their proceeds from, what of their sale of their other projects, having to make quick buys in order to win the lot or the land development. They're turning around and cashing out or using that as the equity in order to do their ground up construction or, those types of products for developments. So with that one exception, I agree with you.
Look, I don't even disagree with that, but that is illicit. That could be money laundering activity. In fact, I'm teaching state CE, right, to loan officers, and all the state SAFE Acts, what they go back to is transparency. They're trying to ensure that transparent activity. And it's like, why are we not more transparent when it comes to corporations and who owns what and where that money's coming from? I kind of agree with Bob on that one, and I like my privacy. It's like, that's a risk of doing the operation within the structure. It's like, look, if you're going to do that, you understand you are then putting yourself out there with knowledge. Anyway, Bob, I might be stepping all over what you were trying to say, but that's what I took from it.
No, I think there's an inclination to want to believe the best in people and that somebody's legitimately a real estate investor and somebody's legitimate. I mean, we have this proclivity towards wanting to believe that people are
inherently good.
Yeah, and when I have trained fraud investigators, the rookie comment that they make is, "Oh, they wouldn't lie. They're a cop. They wouldn't lie. They're a teacher. They wouldn't lie. They're a nurse. They wouldn't lie." And I'm like, "Oh boy, we got to start from ground zero here." Okay, so to protect your reputation, your money, or your family, people lie. And I tell my wife, I still like people. I understand them, and I still like people. Getting to where you've got to be on alert for the money that comes in through a gift. It's not natural to be so paranoid about the gift, but I've used this example when I teach this before. I saw 8 gifts coming in to a borrower, totaling about 100 grand, 6 or 7 different nationalities on these names, all pretending to be relatives. And I'm like, I don't like any of this. I don't like any of this gift. So to your point, Dana, when you get that money into a transaction and now you take it out, cash it out, sell the property or whatever, that's laundered money. So common around the world to launder proceeds like this. We just need to be smart, a little paranoid, a little worried about kind of what comes across the desk. If things aren't normal, and this is what I try and teach the investigators is, to know abnormal, you have to know normal. Right? So normal gift is what? It's a parent, right? Whenever I see a cousin giving money, my first thought is my cousin wouldn't give me any money. I got cousins I wouldn't give money to. So what is this cousin giving money? When it's not normal is when you have to pay attention to it. And 8 gifts aren't normal. So we're all hoping for the best in people. We're all hoping that this is clean, good money. But it merits a little bit of skepticism. I had a case I had one time where the girl engaged in a conspiracy to flip properties with her pastor. And I reached out to interview this girl. She was in her early 20s. And her mom picked up the phone. I explained why I was calling. I was calling to talk to so-and-so. And she goes, "What's this about?" And she really had me trapped. I was really on my back foot. It was like, this woman's a force of nature. "What is this about? You're calling my daughter." "Well, we have a transaction going on with a piece of property." "Is that the property over in Upland?" Yeah, it's the property over in Upland. She grilled me about what her daughter had done, and I'm trying to protect, confidentiality and care. I'm aware. I've got non-public information. She said, "Mr. Simpson, you just stay right there." She dialed her daughter in on the phone.
No.
She told me to be quiet. She dialed the daughter in on the phone. "What are you up to? What are you doing?" And to her mother, she confessed this whole flipping scheme with the pastor. They were going to buy all these properties. She hung up the phone from her daughter, and the mom turns, she says to me, "Mr. Simpson, you'll have your money." And I went, "Man, okay."
Wow.
what a fabulous woman this mother was. She just took charge of that situation. 25 years later, I still feel nervous about that phone call, but it got away from me, right? But it's the fudge marbling in your vanilla ice cream. Life is fine. You're scooping out vanilla ice cream, and then you hit this fudge marble in there, and you gotta be prepared for the fudge marble. You gotta go, oh, this is different, and you never know what you're gonna find. It could be an angry mom that gets her daughter on the line. It could be your local police chief who's flipping properties with somebody from Venezuela. I mean, this stuff goes on, and to live slightly jaded isn't a bad thing. It just means you're aware. You're not a sucker when you do this for a living.
But what you're asking, Bob, though, because that's where I think the myth comes from is it doesn't apply to us. You're asking people who are optimists, loan officers, and those in sales and running a company to be cynics, and I think that's the hard part. They have to admit that they have to do this. And it's just easier not to deal with it because it interferes with their optimism, for lack of a better phrase.
So let me again, one final comment.
Not making their point right, but I'm just saying I think that's what we're battling.
But we talked about this before, where the different employees inside of your mortgage company have different mentalities, from the rah-rah sales guy who's out there selling and originating, to the processors who want to move stuff through, to the underwriters who are looking with a little more jaded eye, and then to your QC people who are like, yeah, I don't believe anything that's there. It's a different mindset all the way through. And what your risk assessment, what I try to do is infuse into my clients the proper skepticism to say, let me take a look at that gift, and not to rule it out as suspicious just because of the employment of that person, the age of that person.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't lie. They're 82. I've heard these things. It's just like, no, you gotta just go at everything with what's normal and what's not.
Yeah, those are really good takeaways.
Yeah.
Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No, just a quick comment. What I like about your business and the way you approach it, Bob, is that there's something about community at the heart of it. Like, if nobody knows they're expected to be good, maybe they won't be good. But if there's that expectation built up, if there are people out there who are laying that down and asking the questions and reminding people, this is actually the law and this is actually the right thing to do, then we're all that much better for it.
I think we're seeing,
good takeaway.
Our industry has evolved, right? We used to see, a very, very wide ocean between, sales and operations or credit risk, back in the day. Some, could potentially say that was the reason why we saw some of the things that we did in the GFC, right? I think that chasm is getting narrower. And there is more emphasis with, I work with salespeople all the time, right? And the first thing a salesperson usually tells me when I'm running sales is, oh, well, you're wearing your credit hat. Yeah, I'm wearing my credit hat because we are the first line of defense, right? So if you're not wearing a credit hat and all you're looking for is a commission, we got a major disconnect here. And so I think some of that mindset and the marrying more of sales and operations and credit risks is evolving that type of mentality more so than it ever has. Is there work to be done? Yes. I talk with salespeople all the time who have no clue whatsoever about what the risk or compliance, can be on a loan. And it's somewhat astounding, but it happens, right? It's a training and education piece of it, for sure. And then we have a responsibility as lenders to make sure we're doing it.
Okay, so my takeaway from this is that Bob should go find this mom again. We put her into charge of parenting has fallen apart in this country. We need to shame our kids to be compliant. And it's one of those things like, they'll just look, think about it. Bob, you're not wrong. If my mother's kind of in the business, she's been in banking, but if she knew it's like, I'm taking shortcuts. Oh my God, that would be an uncomfortable conversation. So we need good parenting back. And this lady, whoever she was, we should hire her and put her on the public. Yeah, exactly.
Ray, you're a lawyer. Imagine the situation where you're talking to a person and they tell you to be quiet, and they're going to get this other person on the line. What do you do with that? I mean, I just sat there. I froze.
A mother would do that.
Yes, we need more of them. That's the person we need.
But she definitely bossed me around.
Yeah, well, we need her.
We brought parenting full circle on this call, right. from regulators all the way down to understanding BSA.
Oh my God,
it's not bad. Look, the myth out there, maybe holistically, and I think you all would agree to this, is that the money rules all. I don't think that's the myth. I think the myth is the money keeps the wheels moving, but really there's this inert drive, be it positive salespeople who are always optimistic that the next sale is just around the corner, to, we only do business where we are most lucrative. And I watch other businesses, thanks to Polygon's data sets, like, no, they're doing business in places that are underprivileged and underserved, and they're doing great things. To DPAs that you're helping companies launch, Dana, like, just because you have a low or a LTV with a DPA system doesn't mean these people are out of whack. It means, look, our systems are hard. Like, it's hard to get past 50% DTI, especially when you've got old college graduates and some debt, and you're working hard to build yourself up, and you want to invest in your family. Like, there are true reasons to do it, and optimistic ones. And then you always need Bob and Ray looking around going, yeah, but what's the risk? What risk are we willing to take on this one? I mean, the myths out there that the dollar drives it, I don't know is true. I think the to beat that myth is that most of the time in this industry, the people I talk to who have made this industry their vocation, what they do, who they are, when they look backwards and they are put to rest in their final days and at their funeral, they want people to say they treated their community well, they funded great loans. These are the people that are really keeping this industry growing right now, especially when times have constricted so much. And even when it comes to the examiners and the regulators, Ray, to your point, they're human. And a human conversation often does more to support the proper execution of our business than an abusive or aggressive one where we are pitting each other against each other. And so my take on that, my last thought that I had, and I think Bob was mentioning this, is that there's a point where numbers are so big. There was a comedian, Eddie Izzard. He did this whole comedic routine at one point, and he mentioned, like, when somebody kills somebody, it's like, it's a travesty, it's tragedy, it's terrible. But then you get to these historical figures that killed millions, and you're like, I don't know how to feel about that. That's just so big. I mentally can't even coordinate my feelings with this. I kind of feel like our mortgage industry is in the same boat, because when you have a $9 trillion industry, most humanity and Americans sit back and go, I don't even know what to do with those zeros. Like, that's so far out of my knowledge. And then you get your headlines of like, oh, 200 billion are going to be directed at buying mortgage-backed securities. People are like, wow, that is a lot. I was like, we need to talk in percentages. You mean 2.7% of the industry is going to get backed by this dollars? That's not so much. The same scenario that we use to sell, if you say, I'm going to give you $10 off this can of tennis balls or pickleballs for Ray, and he's like,
thank you.
The can was like $20. That $10 doesn't get me out of bed. Like, I don't know that I want to go do that. Is it 50% or is it $10? But if I say 50% off, Ray's like, oh my gosh, what a great sale. I think we need to be really clear in our communication, percentages, APRs, and dollar figures, justifiable. That's a good way to take it. Not entirely on topic, but a thought I had. There's my share. So,
well,
Ray, any last thoughts you got?
Well, in your case, Nathan, it's one of the things. Let me just hit a point that you talked about, and that is, I agree that, remember, putting people in homes and seeing and having them realize your American dream is what we do, right? We see that a lot. That's in mission statements, and I have a pet peeve with that a little bit, Nathan. Not because I don't believe in it, but I think we can easily lose sight of that when we're running the business. And so I agree with you. I think a lot of people are doing it for the right reasons, but I think we need to check ourselves on a continuous basis. And that message should be brought forth, a reminder of why we're doing this. I've met enough people that's not why they're doing it. And although people might say that's why they're doing it, it's not happening. So I'm not arguing with you. I'm actually taking your point and saying I agree with you. That's what it should be. I think that's what it is. But I think that ebbs and flows based on how my best month versus my worst month. So, and that's legit. That is human nature. It's legit. So we just need to remind ourselves why we're here. And it's easy for us in risk because we're on the backside. They think we're just critics, and it's all we have to do, for a living, which is partially true. But it's easy. It is hard. I recognize that having been one, and I think all of us in some way were in the past, being in sales and being a loan officer is hard. Really hard. So I think sometimes the mission can slip, but I appreciate the conversation. I think the myths, the issues that we come up with, this is just getting to zero so we can start having discussions about our disciplines to help our clients move forward. That's really the point here. and trying to just baseline things. And I got some clients that 90% of my time is just getting them to the baseline for several months before I can get them to understand we got to move to the next level. So I appreciate everyone kind of sharing that idea, and I'm sure we have plenty of others. Maybe we'll share them in future episodes. But we've all got long lists. But I appreciate the time.
Yeah, I love it.
I appreciate you
I
all.
loved your add-in. Maybe we need to change the podcast to, risk, roll, and random.
No, random is just anything that we get together at this time. So I appreciate you guys making time. Thank you. Dana with Lending Luminary, she takes you, man, if you've got a company and you're used to doing a paper, but there's something else out there, call Dana. She can help you figure out what those look like. Ray Snytsheuvel, the CEO, president, founder of Loan Risk Advisors. It's not a no, it's just how risky is it? That's really his saying. It's like, we're just going to see how risky it is. Greg, partner of Polygon Research, the data extraordinaire. Man, he can pivot data like better than anybody else I've ever seen. Appreciate that, Greg. And then Bob Simpson with Daylight AML. If it's not red flags, he doesn't care. That's really what it comes down to. And I'm Nathan with MLO Force, training and compliance structures, and we appreciate it. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Greg Oliven's going to be the kickoff next episode with whatever topic he determines is the best topic in 2 weeks. We're going to give him, I need to give him 10 days to think about it, and then we'll be back. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone.